Everyone, it's Nicole and I'm here with another video for my mini album for all the books that I am reading in 2019. Now this is the month of April, and in April I have read 10 books, and the reason I almost said I will have read is because today is April 30th or April 29th, and I'm posting that today. And the 10th book, I'm not completely done, but I will be done before May 1st. And I wanted to go ahead and maybe be kind of ahead of the game, getting some of videos done for my mini album, because I did fall behind, a couple months ago. So I'm trying to stay on top of it and to make sure that I get the completed album done, within the year. So like I said, I've read 10 books this month, a couple of one adult contemporary, one young adult contemporary, and all the rest are two young adult contemporary, and all the rest are all fantasy, young adult fantasy, and adult sci-fi. Let's talk a little bit about what I did, and then I'll talk about the books that I read. So before I even turn the camera on, I took some of those little coffee cups that I had stamped a few months ago. I put the numbers of the book, and what the numbers are, that's the number of books that I've read up to now. So starting in April, Intercepted was book 23, and it goes right to book 32 is the last one that I will have read this month. And then once I do that, I decide on a Project Life kit, and I just choose all my Project Life from the same kit for that specific month. I don't go between 4 or 5 of them. This is the kind of thing that I want to do, to kind of document all the books that I've read in the year 2019, but it's not something that I want to spend like 6 hours to get 1 month done. Usually putting these books or documenting these books, it takes me about an hour, and I'm okay with that. So I cut out all the coffee cups. I put the numbers on the coffee cups corresponding with the number of books that I read this month. And, my goal this year is to read 100 books. So I'm already up to 32. I think according to Goodreads, I'm either on track or I'm always like 1 book behind. So I got to make sure that I keep up with how many books I read per month so that I don't fall too far behind. Then once I choose my Project Life kit, I just look at the pictures that I printed, and I printed those on my Canon Selfie using the PicFrame app, and the ratio that I use is 4:3, and it puts 2 pictures on 1 4x6. And then that way, even if, I read 10 books in 1 month, it's still only 5 4x6. So it cuts down on the cost. And I find that the size of the picture fits perfect in the album that I'm using, which is a 6x8. And a lot of the pockets are 3x4, and some of them are 4x6. Then once I put the pictures on, I look up on my Goodreads and figure out which books that I read in which order, because in my album I do want to put them in the order that I read them. And then I just go through the embellishments that I had put in a iris tray. And I don't make it so that it's complicated. I had just gotten these sticker books that are normally for planners, but I'm using them for this. And I just make little embellishment clusters, add a few enamel dots, and I call it good. And then I have a stamp that has the 5 stars on it. I will stamp that on the card, fill in the number of stars that I thought that book was, and then I do a little bit of journaling about each and every one of the books. So while I'm finishing this off, let's just talk about the 10 books that I read this month, because there's quite a few to talk about. So the first one I read in the month of April is Intercepted by Alexa Martin. This is an adult romance, and it's like a sports romance. So this one was about football, and Marley gets hurt by, a love interest, or her fiance, he kind of does something not good and they end up breaking up, and then she kind of swears off, I'm never dating another football player. But then there's a new love interest that comes into her life, and he is a football player, and it's just the adventure of that, or the shenanigans of that. So I gave that 4-star. I really enjoyed it. And the second book in that series, in the playbook series, just came out in April, and I'll be reading that in the month of May. The next book I read was The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. This is a sci-fi, fantasy, dystopian YA book, and there's actually a movie that goes along with this. So I wanted to make sure that I read the book so that I could watch the movie, because I purchased the movie, and I'm hoping that the rest of the books also become movies, and then that way we can go watch it at the theater. So this is about kids that have powers that set them apart from the rest of the world, and because of this, the world is kind of afraid of them, and they put them in camps. And this is about a group of teenagers that escape these camps, and their survival. And this, I absolutely loved it. It was a 5-star read for me. The next book I read was also by Alexandra Bracken, and it was a novella story, and it was called Liam's Story, and he's one of the male protagonists in the first book, The Darkest Mind. And this is a short story about him and his brother, and I really enjoyed it. You can probably skip it. It didn't add, you're not going to miss anything if you don't read it, but I love little novellas like that, and I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read was Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel, and this is an adult sci-fi trilogy. And how it begins is this little girl is riding her bike, and she falls into a hole, and she falls into a big hand, and it's the mystery of where this hand came from, and it was amazing. The first book I gave it 5-star. Absolutely loved it. The next book I read was the finale, so the last book in the trilogy of the Remnant Chronicles by Mary E. Pearson, and it was called The Beauty of Darkness. That has quickly become one of my favorite series, and I know there's 2 more books in that same world. One is called The Dance of Thieves, and it came out last year. I have the book, but I haven't read it yet, because I know that the next book doesn't come out for 4 or 5 months. So I'm going to wait till it's closer to the date of the release so that I can read it. But I absolutely loved this story, and I've talked about this trilogy before. I'll just say that finale was epic, and I gave it 5 stars. Now, the next book I read is from Kristen Kishore, and it's called Graceling. And this is a young adult fantasy book about people that are gracelings. And what that means is that they were graced with an ability. And the abilities are all different. So some people can be graced with being a great swimmer, and some people can be graced with being, the best cook, or that they can sew anything and make, perfect clothes. And our female protagonist, her ability is that she can kill people. And this has been on my shelf forever, probably since I started reading again, 4 years ago, and I hadn't read it yet. And I'm so glad that I picked it up, and it was a 5-star. It is a trilogy, but the other books are companion. So some of the characters that were in the first book, it's going to be their story arc, and I can't wait to read that. But this one here, absolutely loved it. It was a 5-star. The next book I read was Waking Gods, which is the second book in the Themis Files by Sylvain Neuvel. So I can't talk about this one too much because it'll spoil the first one, but I absolutely loved it. It was like a 4.5-star read for me. Absolutely love that book. The next one I read was What I Thought Was True by Huntley Fitzpatrick. This is a young adult contemporary, and for some reason I really like books that are on an island. And these ones, it's about families that live on this island, and in the summer, it's a lot of tourists come, and it's about the locals, and that the tourists that come, they're usually super rich, and it's so it is, a young adult contemporary. So it's about the love story of a girl that's from the island, and then a boy that usually his family would be one of the, I think they had lived, yes, they had lived on the island years ago, but now they're one of the ones that come and kind of visit the island. So one of the super rich ones. But this summer, what is different is that he actually, they call him the yard boy because he got a job to mow everybody's lawn and keep their yard work up to date on the island. And I really thought it was cute. It was a 4-star read. And like I said, for some reason, I really love books that center around islands, whether people are stranded on the island or a couple of the books that I've read lately, it was, Summer of the Salt, where they were on an island. It was like kind of witchy, and so I really love books that are centered around islands, and this one was. The next book that I read was the last book in the trilogy, The Themis File by Sylvain Nouvel, which is Only Human. And I also gave it a 4.5 star. It was a great conclusion to the trilogy. And I haven't done that in a long time, where I start a series and I gotta binge it. I gotta read one book after the other. And that's exactly what I did with the Themis File. And I usually read, 2-3 books at a time. So it looks like there's some books in between that I finished, but I was actually, as soon as I finished one, I kind of concentrated on the other books that I was reading. And the reason I do that, I've had a few questions, is because I find that when I finish a book, for me to start another book, sometimes it can take me to 2 to 3 days to get into another story. But while I'm focusing on one book, and what I mean by that is, I'll read between 75 and 100 pages from a specific book, I'll have 1 or 2 other books where I'm just reading 25 pages. And that's so that I get into the story by the time I finish the book that I'm concentrating on. So, once I finished Sleeping Giants, I was concentrating on Beauty of Darkness so that I could finish it. But I was reading a little bit of Graceling, and I was reading, a little bit of Waking Gods. And then once I finished Beauty of Darkness, then I would totally concentrate on only Graceling, and then reading a little bit of Waking God every day. And then so on and so forth. And then that way, when I finish a certain book, then I'm already invested in another book and I'm excited to finish that book. So I thought I would just explain why I read more than one book at a time. Now, the last book that I read in the month of April, and I'm currently reading I'm about a third done, so I'll read about a third tonight and finish it off tomorrow, which is, April 30th, so I'll have it done by the end of the month, is From Twinkle with Love by Sandhya Menon. I read her first book and really enjoyed it. This one is like a 3-star read for me. It's cute. It is a young adult contemporary, and it's about this girl who enjoys filmmaking and just, how she navigates high school and that kind of stuff. To me, there's 2 types of young adult contemporaries or young adult books. There's the really young adult books, and then there's the older version of young adult. And to me, this feels really young adult contemporary. So for me, it's going, I'm enjoying it, but it's not one of my favorites. It's going to be like a 3-star book for me. And once I finished doing all the journaling, I was like, oh my goodness, I never did my April TBR card. So I went back and grabbed a 4x6 card, and I'm just going to write April TBR with some Tim Holtz little stickers. I'm going to add, a few stickers to the card and just kind of make it pretty. I had this that was leftover sticker, so perfect. I'm going to get to use it. And then there was one sticker that said plan, and I'm just going to add a few more little things. And the last thing to do is just to bring in my mini album and just put all the cards in. Now, because some of my page protectors are 4x6 slots, I just cut a little piece of cardstock that's about 1.5 by 6, and I just glue my 3x4 cards to it so that they don't move around in that 4x6 pocket. And that's it. That's going to complete what I read in April of 2019. And if you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit subscribe. If you're enjoying these videos, if you wouldn't mind, give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. And I want to thank you so much for watching. Bye.